Good afternoon, YouTube. Today's project, we're changing out this old wall switch, probably original to the house from like 1956 or so, whenever it was wired. And this is my switch for the patio light, which is just on the other side of the wall there. So I've got the power disconnected here. What I'm getting ready to do is put in a Z-Wave switch. So this is the switch I accidentally purchased for my diversion load, but for the patio, this just switches a 12-volt wall wart that turns my solar-powered LED lighting on and off. And I was thinking, wow, this would be a perfect place to put this, because then I could do something like put a motion sensor out in the patio, and then I could have the light in the patio turn on when you walk out there in the dark and turn off automatically, rather than having to come inside, open the door, turn the light switch on, and then go back out. And I have a project for the old switch. I needed a little toggle switch like this. So instead of buying a new toggle switch, I'll just use the Z-Wave switch that I accidentally bought. Yeah, it was probably a good thing I got into this. You know, they have the neutral wires here joined with a copper crimp, and this one wire just pulled right out. When I first got this, I was a little confused on the terminals, because they both say line, load, and I was wondering, which one do you hook up? You know, one of them's got to be line, one of them's got to be load. But this is the perfect example of why they designed it this way. You can hook up line or load to this one, and you can hook up the other wire to this one. One of these wires comes from the breaker, and one of them goes up to the outlet that the outdoor light is plugged into. But I don't have to worry about which hot wire is which. I just hook up one to one terminal and one to the other terminal. The circuitry inside here figures out one of these lines has power on it, and the other one has a load on it. And whichever one is live becomes the line side, and whichever one's the load becomes the load side. Yeah, so I use this Klein Tools digital circuit breaker finder, and the idea is you plug this transmitter into the outlet that this switch operates. So I plug this in outside, turn the switch on, and then you run this thing up and down your breaker panel a couple of times, and it will blink when it finds the circuit breaker that this transmitter is plugged into. And then you shut that breaker off. I will label the switch. Usually I put a number, so this is on my circuit breaker number 11. This patio light and the kitchen outlets are on this circuit, but the outlets in this family room here on the wall are on a different circuit. As I work on each particular unit, I figure out what circuit it's on and then try to put the circuit number on the switch itself, so I know that way. And then I also try to label the breaker panel, because yeah, when I moved into the house, I think maybe at one point they had written some circuit descriptions or breaker descriptions on a little sticker in the panel, but that was in the mid-50s, and you could see little faint marks of pencil or a pen, but it was so faded out you couldn't read anything. Okay, there we go, YouTube. Got it all buttoned back up. I've got the circuit number down here on the bottom, number 11, but you can see here I've got patio light, and I can turn it on. You heard it click, and let's see, and my LED strip outside is on. I could turn it off. Yeah, so anyway, all the patio light switch does is turn on that outlet there. There's a single receptacle, and I have a 12-volt 100 milliamp power supply plugged in there, and then that power supply turns on a 12-volt relay that in turn supplies power to the lights. This wall wart is basically my 120 volt to low voltage interface. So this power supply isolates the 12 volt LEDs from the 120 volt wiring in the house. That's what's called a class 2 power supply, so it's inherently safe. You can't get a shock off of it, it can't start a fire. I use a bunch of these through the house, so that way I can have a wall switch plugged into house wiring and use that switch and Z-Wave and all that to control a little power supply, and then that interfaces to my 12 volt LED system, which is powered off of the solar battery bank. So when I turn that light on, there's about 1 watt of power used to turn on that power supply and power the relay, and then all the rest of the power for the relay comes from the solar battery bank. So I've got my solar powered patio lights interfaced to my home automation system. Okay, YouTube, just wanted to show you, I've got this hooked up with my Google Home Assistant here. Turn patio light on.
Sure, turning on the patio light.
Turn patio light off.
Sure, turning the patio light off.
There we go. So I've got everything hooked up. So as I mentioned, I'll be getting a motion sensor to put out here in the patio area to control the light. But earlier this spring I made a video where I talked about adding this booster fan here that during the winter I can set up to blow hot air from out here into the house. Currently that's just a manual switch on top. I have to turn the switch on and off to turn the fan on and off. And at the time I was thinking that would be really hard to automate because you would need to measure the temperature here and the temperature inside the house, and then when the temperature here is greater than the temperature in the house, turn the fan on. And it turns out the motion sensor that I'm getting for the area out here has a thermometer, as well as inside the bathroom there I have a motion sensor that has a temperature sensor as well. All I have to do then is add one of my Z-Wave relays to turn this thing on and off, and I can have that booster fan totally automated. I had accidentally purchased the wrong switch, and instead of going through the hassle of returning the switch, it's like I can use the switch right here to turn on the patio lights, and then once I have the patio lights working, if I had a motion sensor I could make the patio lights come on automatically and also go off automatically, and then that motion sensor has a temperature sensor that then will let me automate this booster fan to get a little more heat in the house. Google Home Assistant works. Yeah, that's pretty neat. It just plugged in the switch this afternoon, and by early evening I had Home Assistant working with it too.